Real Virginia is proudly produced by the Virginia Farm Bureau Federation. Since 1926, Farm Bureau has been working to preserve Virginia farms and our rural heritage. Visit our website at vafb.com.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Real Virginia, a show about Virginia agriculture and the people who produce the wonderful local products we enjoy. Brought to you by the Virginia Farm Bureau. Virginia farmers will be part of the next discussion on federal farm policy. Winter is the perfect time to plan your own blueberry patch. And we visit beautiful Alleghany County for our regular County Agricultural Close-Up feature.
Home will always be Virginia, between the Blue Ridge and Chesapeake Bay, Atlantic to Appalachia, home in my heart always.
Welcome back to Real Virginia, everyone. We're coming to you this week from Creamfield Farm in Hanover County. The nation's most comprehensive federal farm legislation will be before Congress later this year. Norm Hyde reports Virginia farmers have definite opinions on what should be included in the Farm Bill.
Farmers from across Virginia met at Virginia Farm Bureau's annual convention last November to discuss farm issues and what policies to pursue in the new year. Top of the list for many producers is the debate over the upcoming 2023 Farm Bill, which is reviewed every 5 years. Andrew Walmsley is Senior Director of Government Affairs for the American Farm Bureau Federation. He encouraged Virginia Farm Bureau members to reach out to their elected leaders and share their views on what's important to them, especially after a year when farm prices rose, but expenses rose even more.
One of the most important provisions of the Farm Bill is our risk management programs. When you look at the commodity title and you look at the crop insurance title, those are really two critical tools farmers and ranchers need to manage the risk of farming. When you look at who our business partner is, Mother Nature, she throws a lot at us. You look at the volatility of the markets, all the geopolitical events that are taking place around the world.
Crop insurance is the safety net that helps keep us in business in events of weather adversity, which here on the East Coast we deal with not only droughts but also with hurricanes. And crop insurance is that safety net that's needed by us to maintain a profitable farming operation.
Montague Farms in Essex County has sold soybeans and other crops to foreign buyers for decades. Their operation buys from other growers in the area as well. Like all grain growers, they face enormous risks every growing season. Hensley says crop insurance can take some of the risk out of the weather worries.
We have seen fuel, fertilizer, and chemical prices all significantly higher. In many cases, our fertilizer has been 2.5 to 3 times what it was in 2021. So that has been mitigated some by the higher commodity prices, but it has made it more challenging to operate in 2022.
Another major component of every recent farm bill has been federal funding for conservation programs. Virginia farmers can access several state and federal programs for financial assistance to help improve their farm practices. But the money has to be there in one form or another.
There is a lot of focus now on climate. We can't lose sight of those other resource concerns that we as land managers must continue to look at. Water quality, quantity, wildlife, all of those different things that you have to manage on the landscape doesn't go away.
Members of Congress will be holding several public hearings throughout rural America this year to gather feedback from farmers. For decades, the Farm Bill has included funding for both commodity programs and federal food assistance. In the last Farm Bill, 80% of the budget was set aside to provide help to Americans in need.
When you look at food security, it really is national security. And you look at farm to fork and the needs of those that are less fortunate to ensuring we have a strong domestic agriculture industry, it makes sense to keep those programs together.
Up until the recent pandemic and we saw some supply chain shortages, we don't question food availability. We go to the grocery store and we buy whatever we want. If the Farm Bill is not a robust program to support our agriculture, then we may become reliant on other countries for our food.
Like most federal legislation, the debate will be over how much money is set aside for which programs. The 2018 Farm Bill cost almost $1.3 billion over 5 years. A large sum, but pretty small compared to the $6.27 trillion spent by the federal government in just 2022. Walmsley says it's important for farmers to speak up.
It's a poor frog who won't croak for their own pond. And so you've got to be engaged, you've got to be out there telling your story, meeting with your lawmakers and letting them know how this policy decisions in Washington affects you on the farm.
In Essex County, Virginia, I'm Norm Hyde reporting. While Congress offered some support for pioneer farmers, the first true farm bill came in response to the trials farmers faced during the Great Depression. It offered financial assistance to farmers in exchange for government production controls, and was the first federal effort to address erosion problems like those that caused the Dust Bowl of the 1930s. Modern farm bills have several titles addressing commodity supports and conservation, along with food assistance funding. Crop insurance has taken the place of most direct payments, and conservation projects are usually cost share, meaning producers have to pay at least some of the expense themselves.
Hi, today we're going to be talking about how you can grow blueberries from the ground up. Please stay tuned.
We're stronger together, especially at this difficult time. For over 90 years, we've watched our membership grow, and we're honored to be part of such a special community. Thank you to the farmers who provide for us every day. Virginia Farm Bureau is proud to serve our members, their families, and to give back to our local communities. That's the Farm Bureau way.
Blueberry shrubs can be both an excellent garden planting and a food plant. Chris Mullins with Virginia Cooperative Extension says winter is a great time to plan your blueberry plantings from the ground up.
Well, hello and welcome. Today we're in Hanover County, Virginia. We're at Lily Shelton's small farm where she does a little bit with vegetables, but she also grows some blueberries, or is getting started with blueberries. So we're going to talk about that today. When she got into this by working with Virginia State University's Small Farm Outreach Program, and we're here with Vernon Heath. Vernon is with the Small Outreach Program. And Vernon, tell us a little bit about the program and what it does and how you got involved with Ms. Shelton.
Well, initially, we had Ms. Shelton. She was involved in the orientation class, which is a 2.5-hour class. And basically, we just talk about all the different categories of farming and mainly focus on some of the things that you will be doing in the future as you develop your farm. After the orientation class, I came out and visited with her, and we analyzed her site. From that point, that was a 3.5-year process of attending programs, getting soil samples, using USDA agencies, using your local extension office, and many more. And from that, this is where we are.
Well, that's great. Sounds like a great program. And I want to go with Lily and see what she's growing as far as the blueberries. Well, Lily, this really is a small farm. I can see by looking at your planting here and what you're going to continue to do, you've got a nice sizable little operation. Tell me, what's your goal here? What are you trying to do?
Well, ultimately, the goal is to be able to sell some blueberries, and I would like to be able to make blueberry preserves.
Oh, that's excellent. I bet they're going to be great. And I can see you've kind of gone through a process to make sure that these plants are going to thrive. And I know you've got some plants, usually buy plants and put them in the ground, but you've done a little bit more here. I imagine you've probably prepared the ground because blueberries, don't they require a low pH?
Yes, the ground was prepared first. This whole area I put down sulfur, and the soil test said that it was ready for me to plant the blueberries. And then in, the depth of 7 inches or so down, and that actually also has a mixture of mulch in the soil.
Okay.
And then I came back and we have mulched, and then the ground cover.
Now I see this ground cover. It's really unique. It's a woven material, but it really keeps the weeds down, doesn't it?
Yeah, this is very good ground cover. I actually got it from a place that was recommended, which is that berry irrigation.
Okay, and does a great job of keeping the weeds down. And I know you're going to put it on some of these other beds to keep the grass and broadleaf weeds from coming.
Yes, I have more.
That's great. And I see that you've got irrigation line, because sometimes, especially during the summer in Virginia, we have some drought. So you've got that line. So that's going to make sure or ensure that these plants are going to thrive.
Yes, the water is really necessary.
Well, I imagine you've got some different varieties here also.
Yes, I have Dukes, Draper, Sunshine, Legacy.
Okay, so you've got a whole lot of different things, and they probably mature at different times, don't they?
Yes, they do. Some are earlier, some are later, so that should help me to be able to harvest at different times.
Well, it sounds like you're doing everything to make sure these plants do really well, and I know sometimes critters will get to the blueberries, especially deer. Tell me what you're doing to keep the deer out.
Yeah, deer graze on this property, so this is a 7.5-foot deer fence, premium deer fence, and these are 10-foot T-posts. So I feel pretty good about being able to keep the deer at bay, hopefully.
Well, for more information about growing blueberries, contact your local county extension office and talk to a master gardener. For From the Ground Up, I'm Chris Mullins. We'll see you next time.
From the Ground Up is presented with the generous advice and assistance of Virginia Cooperative Extension. Visit their website at ext.vt.edu.
Hi, I'm Chef Tammy Brawley with The Green Kitchen. Coming up on Heart of the Home, chicken and dumplings. Stay tuned.
Our cow, she walks into the barn, she gets milked. Milk's taken from her and put through a chiller. And that milk's taken from body temperature of a cow, which is about 102.5, and dropped to 35 degrees and put straight onto a tractor trailer. And it goes straight to the plant the next day. So most of the milk that's sitting on your store shelves is probably less than 48 hours old. And that's a pretty good testament to how efficient we are.
When you think of hearty winter meals, chicken and dumplings are often at the top of the list. Chef Tammy Brawley shares her own recipe for this classic dish in the heart of the home.
Hi, I'm Chef Tammy Brawley from The Green Kitchen. Today we're going to show you how to make some delicious chicken and dumplings. We're going to start by making homemade chicken broth. There's nothing like it for any kind of recipe that's a base. And what we've done here is we've added 4 cups of water. We're going to use the Instapot, which I think probably a lot of people have these days. Best way to make broth, and it only takes about 30 minutes or so. So I've got 4 cups of water so far, and we're going to go ahead and add the vegetables. I learned to make chicken stock in culinary school, and we actually learned to go ahead and use the peel for the onion, so I'm really not concerned about that. Concerned about peeling it, that is. I'm going to go ahead and add the whole onion to part of the water that I've got. Same thing with the celery. We're actually going to use the leaves on the celery, so we're just going to kind of rough chop the celery. Now I went ahead and bought just the baby carrots in the grocery store. I don't see any reason not to use those. If you want to cut them in half, you can. Just for time purposes, we're going to ahead and add probably about a half of a bag, maybe a third of a bag. Now one thing we're not going to do at this point is season the chicken broth, okay? You want to actually get this flavored with the vegetables and then come back later after it's been strained, and that's when you would actually season it. I cooked a whole chicken, and we have the carcass here. I pulled the meat off already because we're going to go ahead and use that in the chicken and dumplings, but the carcass I saved. I'm going to add that to our Instapot. I'm going to add another 4 cups of water. So it's a total of about 8 cups of water, which is 2 quarts. We're going to set the Instapot under the broth setting, and it's going to take about a half an hour. All right, so now that our chicken broth is almost done in the Instapot, we're going to go ahead and make our dumplings. We've got about 1 3/4 cups of flour in our little container here. I don't want to add it all because, one, I need enough to roll out the dumplings themselves. So we'll leave a little flour in the container. We're going to add a 1/2 teaspoon of salt and a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. And you want about 1/3 cup or so of vegetable shortening or lard. In this case, it's lard. Now you can get in here a couple different ways. If you have a pastry blender, that's great. A pastry blender is a tool that's got 2 blades on it. You can get in here with 2 forks. And you just want to get in here and kind of mash it up a little bit. You want a crumbly sort of texture. Might even get in there with my fingers in just a few minutes. This takes just a couple of minutes, but not that long. You almost want it crumbly like a graham cracker crust texture sort of thing. This is just about ready for our milk. Recipe calls for about 3/4 cup of milk. You may not need that much. So you want to add a little bit and stir it in and see if you need to add any more. You also may not need as much liquid if it is a rainy day, believe it or not. Moisture in the air can affect all sorts of baking. So we're going to add probably about a half a cup to start. I'm going to come back in here with a fork again. We do want it a little thick, but I can tell by the way it feels with my fork that it's not enough milk. We're going to go ahead and add a little bit more. Now I can tell it's definitely come together, which is great. Now I want to put a little flour on my board here. We come back in here with our fingers. We're going to get messy. But that's half the fun of cooking, if you ask me. Dump our dumpling dough out onto the floured board. So we're just going to roll that dough around a little bit. I can tell it's very sticky still. I may have added just a tad too much milk. So I am going to incorporate a little bit of flour into it. Now, the texture feels really good. I think I'm doing well with it. About ready for my rolling pin. Definitely. All right, we'll grab a rolling pin that you have waiting, and you just want to kind of go out flat with it. You don't want these terribly thick. I know growing up, I think my mom used biscuits, if I'm not mistaken. These are actual dumplings. These are going to be cut in sort of rectangular, odd pieces. You don't really want it terribly, terribly thick. I think it tastes better when they cook as well. There we go. We're probably looking for about 1/4 of an inch thick or so. Don't forget to roll the side closest to your body. People do tend to forget that when they're rolling out dough. All right, that is pretty much done. Now we want to cut our dumplings. Don't worry about consistency and size. It's all right. And don't worry about that either. I see the ragged edge. Maybe do a little flour on your knife. And if you're only feeding 2 people, this might be a little much, but it's certainly big enough for a family of 4. Then again, leftovers are always a great thing. All right, there's our dumplings ready to cook, and now we have to take our chicken broth out of our Instapot. It's still under pressure, I know, so I'm going to go ahead and release that manually. All right, so the pressure's been released. We're taking our lid off now, and there is that delicious chicken broth. Even without seasoning, it just smells heavenly. So I'm going to step off of camera for a moment to empty it into a colander. The colander is actually setting in a pot. Obviously, I want to reserve the broth, so I'm going to take it off camera for just a second. Now, if we wanted to cool this completely overnight, it's a good thing to do. Then tomorrow we could actually skim off the fat, but we don't, for time purposes, we're not going to do that. We're just going to sit it here for just a moment. I'm going to add the broth. All right, so our broth has started to come to a boil. We're going to add some dumplings. You don't want to grab them up by the handful because then that's how they'll cook in the broth. You really want to add them separate. Kind of be a little quick about it. They're going to start to float to the top. They should pretty much be done then. All right, these are all floating to the top. Now I'm going to go ahead and remove them onto a pan. You don't want to let them sit too long either because they'll start sticking together. So you really want to move a little quick. Get all of your dumplings out. Now the chicken that I cooked was about a 5-pound or so bird, and it produced quite a bit of meat. So I don't know that I need to add all the meat to the broth, but it is a combination of dark and light meat. I am definitely a dark meat girl, so I prefer more of the thigh and the legs as opposed to the breast. But a mixture of the two are great as well. So we have a spoon. I'm going to stir it. I just want to kind of see how much chicken is in there. Definitely could stand a little bit more. Now we're going to go ahead and add the dumplings back in. So if they were a tad undercooked, this is when the cooking process will continue. This is just about done. It's time to get rid of that spatula and just use the spoon. Now it's at this point You would maybe taste it and see if you needed to add any salt or any sort of seasoning. I can tell based on my preferences of how I like to do chicken and dumplings, I do want this broth just a little bit thicker. So I'm going to go ahead and stir in a few tablespoons of cornstarch into some milk that I have waiting. It's going to give it a nice creamy texture. Now I don't have a spoon handy to taste it, but I'm smelling it and I think it already needs to add some salt. All right, so now it has cooked for a few moments with the chicken in there. I added a little bit of a mixture of the cornstarch and milk mixture to thicken it. It is ready for service. We're going to put some in a bowl here. And I cannot wait to dig into this. And there you have it, chicken and dumplings. I'm Tammy Brawley with The Green Kitchen, and we hope you'll join us again on Heart of the Home.
Recipes from the Heart of the Home can be found on the Virginia Farm Bureau website at vafb.com/recipes, as well as on Chef Tammy Brawley's website at greenkitchenrichmond.com.
Poultry is the most valuable sector of Virginia's farm economy, and chickens raised for meat are the top commodity. In 2021, more than 284 million broiler chickens were raised in the Old Dominion. After processing, that amounts to almost 1.8 trillion pounds of chicken products for consumption in the U.S. and abroad. In 2019, sales of broiler chickens brought more than $847 billion to Virginia's farm economy. About 20% of all chicken products produced in the U.S. are sold overseas. Most chickens are raised in enclosed production houses to deliver feed, fresh water, and a stable environment while protecting the birds from predators and avian diseases.
Alleghany County is home to breathtaking mountain views. Forestry is big business here, but traditional agriculture continues to play a significant part in this community. Burke Mueller has more in this week's County Agricultural Close-Up.
Part of the western border of Virginia and named for the mountain range, Alleghany County is rural and remote. Over half of the county is forest land, with both the George Washington and Jefferson National Forest running through parts of the county. John Quantz is the Alleghany County Farm Bureau president and has lived here all his life. He owns 117 acres and leases many more in order to raise cattle.
When I bought this property, it just seemed like I needed to do something with it, and the cattle have helped me maintain it. So it's been a little bit of a hobby, but it's grown over the years. And then once my son John Jr. got into high school range, he started being interested in it. We do work together now, and he helps me and does maybe the lion's share of the work with the herd.
Even this far west, Alleghany County is part of the Chesapeake Bay watershed. Quantz and his son John Jr. have added a fenced-off area for their cattle to drink, preventing water pollution and erosion. They received cost-share funding for the fence-out project under Virginia's Best Management Practices program for agriculture from the Mountain Soil and Water Conservation District. Saul Pasco is one of Quantz's neighbors. He returned home 3 years ago to his father's farm after graduating from UVA. He and his girlfriend Gwen are raising cattle and embracing the farm lifestyle.
I think really just the love of being outdoors is really what made me realize what made me realize, that I wanted to at least work outside. I didn't want to have a normal desk job, and I enjoyed, the lifestyle of farming. It's 24/7, but there aren't many days or aren't many other jobs where you can, be out with your animals during the day.
He says he's seen how fellow Alleghany farmers have helped each other out in time of need.
There's definitely a sense of community, at least something that we've experienced within this valley, at the very least. There have been multiple times over the past, too many times to count, over the past couple years where neighbors that have farmed have helped us out in times of need, and we've helped them out. So there's definitely a pretty strong sense of community.
Alleghany County has 165 farms, covering 30,857 acres. The market value of all agricultural products is $2,742,000. Livestock makes up 71% of that, accounting for $1,933,000. Most of that income is from cattle and calves, worth more than $1 million each year. Crops make up the other 29% of farm income, at $809,000. Hay is the most valuable crop, worth $658,000. The county seat is Covington, which was once a major rail artery. Today, the largest employer is the paper mill operated by Westvaco. Forestry and timber harvesting are the top local industries. Outside of town, the area is known as the Alleghany Highlands and has several attractions, such as the Humpback Bridge and the Falling Spring Waterfall. Agriculture is a challenge in this heavily wooded environment, but farmers are dedicated to their land. Jack Harlow is a third-generation farmer, raising cattle on about 50 acres.
My grandparents, at one time, the family owned the whole valley down through there. There was 9 kids, and then they split it up 9 different ways, and this is the last parcel of land that is by the heirs, owned by an heir of my grandparents.
Not far from Harlow's farm, nonagenarian Jasper Persinger Jr. feeds his cattle just as he has when he bought his land in 1958. He and his wife own 100 acres and lease another 300.
We've raised registered purebred Pole Hereford cattle. We think it's the best breed you can have. The red and white ones, the Pole Hereford, are more gentle and easier to work with, especially for an old man like me. And we just can't seem to quit.
That applies to all the farmers here in Alleghany County. They can't seem to quit doing what they love. Farming is a labor of love here for those taking part in it, and they're determined to make it a way of life for generations to come. In Alleghany County, I'm Burke Moeller reporting.
We're so glad you could join us this week to celebrate all the bounty Virginia has to offer. From the kitchen to your home and garden to our beautiful wide open spaces, we are proud to say that this is real Virginia. For everyone from the Virginia Farm Bureau, thanks for watching. Make it a great week.
Home will always be Virginia, between the Blue Ridge and Chesapeake Bay, Atlantic to Appalachia, home in my heart always.
There are 30,000 roadway accidents each year involving cars and farm machinery. Farmers will be moving equipment for planting and harvest season. The slow-moving vehicle triangle in red and fluorescent orange colors and flashing lights allow for quick identification. When you see an SMV sign on farm equipment, slow down, prepare for sudden stops and slow turns.
Patience will save lives. Just remember, we all need to share the road, we all need to be responsible, and we need to be guided by the law.
Motor vehicle safety starts with you.